Obviously we're seeing things like expertise in coding and expertise in technical proficiency and things like that, very hard skills and true sciences. We're seeing that. We're seeing in true applications of science. We're seeing expertise at an all-time high. But when it comes to these dynamic prudential areas, I think that's the area where expertise is really, really letting us down.
Agreed. I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying there. I guess, I mean, it's kind of funny because it seems like a day doesn't go by now that we don't get another story of some organization doing a mea culpa quietly, if you will, but still doing a mea culpa on what they said about COVID, for example.
Yes.
I don't remember which organization it was. Maybe it was like World Health or whatever. So maybe the COVID came from a Chinese lab. But even worse than that, I don't really care as much. I probably should, but I don't care as much of where it came from as much as what the response was from these so-called experts. If we didn't prove that experts are, and I want to be careful here because as we wrote, and I will bring this up forever and ever, not because we are an expert, we just used some common sense. As we wrote in March of 2020 that we got to be careful that the cure isn't worse than the disease. There were experts that were sounding the alarm, and then guess what happened? They got crushed. They got canceled. Call it what you want. They were thrown into the loony bin by the media and the so-called, those that were in a position of being of wielding power as experts. Okay, so those people were experts and were sounding the alarm, and nobody was listening to them. Well, at least the proper people weren't listening to them, or the people that had the reins of power weren't listening to them. So, I mean, I think these last few years with COVID and even more, maybe even more so, well, I don't know, or at least just equally, the wake of COVID and what was done in order to try and offset the effects of COVID has just been a disaster. So yeah, it's not hard to be skeptical of expertise, quote unquote, these days. And I have to be careful because in our business, I often say, jack of trades, master of none, because we kind of have to know a little bit about everything, just enough to be dangerous. I mean, we're not trying to be, we're not experts, for example, on semiconductors, but we know a lot about semiconductors enough, in our view, to be able to, make investment decisions about them. And I truly believe, and this was something that my, mentor and father-in-law, Dick Taylor, always used to say is, you need to understand enough of things just to be able to make a sound investment decision. If you're not required to know how all the science works behind it. You want to find people that do, so you can ask the proper questions to determine whether or not it's a sound investment. So we get exposed to a lot of things, and sometimes maybe we can sound smart, but we really aren't. More than anything, and I think where expertise is really overemphasized is in our business. And I'll give credit to someone I criticize a lot, Warren Buffett, who I don't remember exactly how he said it, but it's something that far more important in investing is your stomach, not your brain. I think that's very true. More than anything in investing, you need a disciplined process, and you need to stick to that discipline at periods in time when it looks like you just don't know what you're doing. I mean, and we're human, and when we see things go sideways, we question ourselves. But it's that where a true professional comes in or steps up in our business is, no, this is how we do it. We're not deviating from this discipline. We're not turning tail and running in another direction because it's gotten tough. It's gotten the heat in the kitchen is burning us, and I can't tell you how many times that's been absolutely the way to approach things. And it will always be the way to approach things, in my opinion, from an investment management standpoint. I have said so many times, this isn't rocket science, what we do. It just takes a level of tenacity and discipline that most don't have, which is why we have a job. this isn't something that others can't do, not in any way, shape, or form. And I will also add, there are more than one way to skin the cat, to use an overused term or phrase, that our way is not the only way. It's just our way is going to be our way, and we're not going to change. As soon as you start trying to deviate in what you do and how you do it, then you've got trouble. And the problem is, in our industry, we see that all the time. Even the typical mutual fund, which I would argue, which is run by a professional money manager who should have a discipline, and probably and maybe does, likely does. But the problem is that the average mutual fund tenure of the manager is like 4.2 years or something. I think that's largely a sign of that most of the money is in the hands of a very few number of mutual fund companies. We're a little tiny speck with our mutual fund, our core growth fund, a tiny speck on the beach of the financial services world. Whereas we're not talking about an 80-20 rule in our business. It's like 98-2 or 99-1. The 1 or 2% of the actual firms manage most of the money. And I think that's part of the reason why they have this slew of mutual funds on their menu, and the managers are changing all the time. And so the poor shareholder doesn't ever get that long a period of time of a disciplined process. Not all of them are like that by any means. In fact, if you're searching for a mutual fund, find ones that have long tenured managers. That's probably the most important thing. It does, and so that's an aspect of is the expertise what makes you successful? And I think the answer is not really. It's the discipline. It's stick-to-itiveness. It's having that gut be like ironclad in periods where it's like, oh my gosh, this is just not working right now. And for sure, we had a couple of years here where there's just been really difficult after having 5 years of being on the cloud 9 with our portfolio strategy. That's going to happen. And clients and shareholders of funds will lose patience and leave. That's part of the process. We try and keep that from happening. And lo and behold, almost all the time, and all the time, every time in my career, that's been the wrong thing for shareholders or clients to do, but it happens. Find a decent manager, stick with it through thick and thin. And as long as something hasn't happened, like you sense that they've changed their strategy, worst thing that could ever happen. And that is just a recipe for disaster.
Well, especially changing the strategy from a time of weakness. It's one thing
absolutely
when things are good, and to take a look at, okay, we had a big drop, things went down, now we're back, we're caught up, let's rethink. I'm not advocating that for us or anything like that, but I'm saying, but it's so much worse to change it when things are bad than when things are calm or good. You don't make good decisions during that time.